Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Snyder Law Live, Nuggets of Knowledge. I'm your host, Kevin Snyder, here in my office. We're going to talk about today's topic, which has been trending every day we meet with clients, is how do I choose my trustee without losing my mind? So oftentimes when I'm meeting with clients, I'll be chatting with them, and we'll get to this topic about who's going to be managing my trust if it's not me or my spouse. Lots of times there's a big pause and we have a very long conversation. Why? Because other than our spouse, and particularly if we don't have a spouse, who do we inherently trust to be able to manage our assets? Who do we think is going to be responsible enough? Who's going to work well with our family? Who has experience in handling financial assets? Who's going to be a good steward of our assets for our trust for our loved ones? And really, when you think about all these things, it can be difficult. As the human condition goes, I find that naturally, even myself in doing my own planning, you think about family members and you think about relationships, and you get concerned perhaps about choosing one over the other. And we see this a lot when working with families that have multiple adult children. Well, we don't really want to choose one over the other, or how do we choose one but not another? So all of these things together, I have some just tips, some things to think about if you're one of those people that are wrestling today with a concept or idea of who do I choose as a successor trustee, especially if that's what's holding you up in your planning process. So some things to consider. Number one, is this a person that you believe is going to be a responsible steward of your assets? Is this somebody that shares the same values, fiscal values, as you do? Is this somebody that would use your trust assets the same way that you would if you were still alive? Do they have the same goals for your family members as you do for those assets? Number two, is this somebody that has the experience in working with financial assets professionally? Are they an accountant? Do they work in wealth management? Are they an attorney? They don't necessarily have to have these professions, but do they have good experience in managing their own assets? What do they do at home? Are there somebody that is organized, responsible? These traits are important because these trustees are going to need to continue to do these type of activities moving forward with your assets. You're going to want somebody who's organized, not simply somebody that's related to you. Is this person, number three, is this person somebody that's going to work well with my family? Because who are you doing all this planning for? Your family. So the person that you choose to manage your assets, is this somebody that's going to be combative with your family? Is this somebody that your beneficiaries don't have a really good relationship with? That's going to cause conflict and problems down the road. And no matter how well you develop your planning, if there is an open door for conflict, personal conflict, that opens the door for court conflict later. And the whole idea of doing your planning, of course, is to create a seamless plan that's going to avoid court and conflict. So personal relationships amongst people that you would name as trustee, very, very important. And lastly, of course, is my trustee a beneficiary? Am I considering one of my children? Maybe my children are going to be my beneficiaries, probably. And are they somebody that can be a trustee? Are they adults? And if they are, is it a good idea to have my adult child be a trustee of my trust if I'm not able to, if I'm incapacitated or I passed away? And especially if I have more than one child, and naming one over the other, is that going to create some sort of conflict? Is having my children be co-trustees a good idea or not? Does that create conflict as well, or inherent issues? And lastly, does it affect any creditor protections that I might want in my trust? How would that work out if my child's a beneficiary? All great questions to consider, and things that we talk about with our clients. Now, I'm going to leave you with some other lasting tips that you can have here as well when you're considering. And it all comes down to communication. In a lot of our planning in life, not just estate planning, but just personal planning, family planning, what have you. It just comes down to really good communication. And that is the same here. So when you're considering potential successor trustees, or perhaps you've already named them, I would advise you to have some conversation. Talk to them. Let them know that you're considering. Because just because you think that they're a good candidate doesn't mean that they feel that they're a good candidate. And a little thing that I'd like to share with clients, and some are more surprised than others to learn this, is just because you've named them in your trust doesn't require them to be a trustee. They might feel a personal obligation, but they don't have a legal obligation to serve as your trustee. In fact, if they feel that they're not up to par to be the trustee, they actually have a legal obligation to disclaim, reject, not be the trustee. So it's important to have those conversations now, naturally, for you to find out that they can't or don't want to be the trustee, or they don't feel that they're a good choice. Then you saved yourself a lot of effort and your family a lot of headache later on. Also, when you're talking to them about them possibly being a trustee, you have an opportunity to really interview them, so to speak, about how they would handle situations, how they might deal with certain choices that you think are important. Maybe it's choices regarding where your kids would go to school, or choices of different expenditures that you might think could happen down the road. What would they do in those scenarios? How do they handle their own finances? Are they very organized? Do they do the taxes in their family? What experience do they have there? Who do they use as a professional themselves? These are all important things that you can talk to them about to get a little bit more clarity to determine whether this person really is a good person for the role, not just somebody that you know very well that you trust as a person. They might not end up being the right person for the job. And of course, talking about how they're going to work with your family and kind of flesh out some other ideas around that. But I've been talking about individuals. These same types of conversations you can have with other firms. There are professional fiduciary firms. There are corporate trustees that are out there, and that's what they do as part of their business. They manage trusts. And you can choose these corporate fiduciaries or professional fiduciaries to be the trustees, successor trustees of your trust. But I would encourage you to interview them, have these conversations. What are the fees to manage these trusts? Are you beholden to certain products and investments, or are you open to invest freely? What is the succession plan of your business? What happens if you no longer are practicing? This is particularly important for professional fiduciaries that are either individuals or smaller firms. What would happen in that scenario? And have you built that in as part of your planning? So bottom line, and when you're choosing your successor trustee, I really encourage you to do more than simply make a short list of those that you feel are important in your life. You definitely would definitely need to have those people a part of your life and your family's life afterwards, but they might not be well suited for this particular role of a successor trustee. So do your homework, have the conversations, and of course, if you have any questions, would love to hear them. We're on our Q&A part right now. I see a couple people have joined. How you doing, Carolyn? Frank's in. Hi, Frank. Kelly's just joined us. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to take them right now. So we'll just take a moment for a second to wait to see if anyone has a question. Yes, that's a good question. So the question is, should I have more than one person serve as a successor trustee? I hear this a lot. So here's the scenario. You have named your spouse as your successor trustee, and your spouse, you and your spouse have both passed away. So who's going to be next in line? You have adult children. You have 3 adult children. So should you name all 3 of them to be trustees together? Because how can you choose between them? Who's more important? They're all very smart, and you just can't decide. Should you have 3? Well, that's dependent on whether or not how you feel about your kids, of course. And we counsel our clients to really look at specifically the relationships between those children and people that they're deciding to be successor trustees. It may be a fine idea. It may not be a great idea. You really have to play out the scenarios. But remember, anytime that you have more than one person in life, whether they're a successor trustee or in any other role in life, there could be some complications when people disagree. So if you're going to choose that, make sure that you're talking to your estate planning attorney about what happens if they disagree and building in the protocols of what would happen in those situations so that you don't inadvertently create more of a mess. Sadly, I have seen on the other end of planning, on the trust administration side, clients that haven't gone through that analysis very deeply, and they do have situations that have arisen that they've made their plans more complicated or without fail-safes so that trust assets are decimated in court litigation when kids are fighting over control when people don't agree. Or neither of their children are able to serve because they come to an impasse and the court has to intercede. So it provides some pause for you to have those conversations. So I thank you for your time. You guys have all been a wonderful audience, and unless there are any other questions, I'll let you go forth for your day, enjoy your lunch. Please be sure to check into Facebook. Let me know what type of questions you have. You can either private message me or put it right out there on our Facebook page. We're taking suggestions. We want to hear from you of what you want to hear about in the future. Glad to take this time every week and do this Lunch and Learn series and answer your questions that you have so that we can make this whole process more approachable for you. Because we see too many people not engage in estate planning or going back and reviewing their plans simply because it can be complicated. It can be confusing. You don't know what you don't know. So the whole idea of this is to get that information out there, get you guys warmed up and thinking about how you can continue to protect yourself each and every day. Love to hear from you. Thank you for the time. And I want you to go out there this week, love much, dream big, and plan well. All right, guys, take care.